Hello friends, welcome back for another part of our walkthrough of Oxygen Not Included's base game. We're on cycle 152, we're getting pretty far in. I would say we're probably exiting the early game by this point. And this is usually where I think most new players are going to start to struggle because either they have run out of their base resources and they don't really know how to replace it with the next portions. The goals can also be a little bit ambiguous in this part of the run as well, so yeah, like I've been mentioning, one of the bigger things is you're going to need renewable resources of pretty much everything you're using. And one of them especially is water. And our water situation's looking okay. We are still manufacturing a little bit of it. But we do need a longer term source of it. And that's what I've been searching for quite a while. If you take a look at the map, I've revealed a lot of it and have not found anything really all that useful. I think the best we've still found so far is this saltwater geyser. There was a second saltwater geyser, I think here. Both of them have the same problems, though. They're both going to be way too hot, so I'm just going to keep looking, and if I have to use the saltwater geyser, then I will. But yeah, so still searching for that, and that is our main focus right now. But in the meantime, following up on what we were talking about on the last video, natural gas is all up and running. You can see we're still pouring some in here. This will eventually get overfilled, and we will replace this vent with something better in the meantime, but since we don't need to go in here anymore, you can just wall this off, just so you don't have any temperature exchange with this salt water. I don't necessarily want to heat up anything around my base. I'd rather just keep all the heat contained here, so if I just wall it off with that one block right there, we should be good. We also did use these tanks up here to hold all of the gas that was in here earlier because we couldn't really vent it out. So I just connected that to a vent, got rid of everything out of there so that we're not losing any oxygen by doing this, so yeah, just going to get rid of all this. We'll talk a little bit about spiffing this up a little bit more. This is still kind of a mess, but we can make this better. And I'll show you a fancy way to do that. We might as well just do that now, actually. If you have a situation like this where I have this totally walled in and I don't want to crack it for any reason, but I need to move this wall over because this is going to be my kind of central area, and I really don't want to have to divert around this if I don't have to. So here's a trick you can do. Your duplicates are capable of reaching and building in on these corners if they have access to it. Doing this will not break the seal, but now I can kind of start to crawl these things in like that, and my duplicates should still be able to reach this as long as they can stand close enough to it. So I'm going to eventually do that until I move it all the way into here and can build a full wall. Now I can just do it here because that won't break the seal. And I can also do this because that won't break the seal. And just kind of crawl my wall over there. So if you ever need to do something like this, this can be pretty handy for anything that you have kind of airtight or something that you don't want to expose any of your duplicates to. Maybe it's super hot in there or something like that. So that's definitely an option. Yeah. We have talked about that. I'm just checking my notes here. The next things we're going to want to probably start worrying about, and the reason I left some space here is because if I need to go back in here and maintain some things, this is going to get very hot, and my duplicates won't be able to last in here without getting burned. So I did leave a little bit of space for us to eventually use suits here, and we're going to start thinking about getting towards that. But suits are going to require a couple things that we might not have a ton of available. So let me check our reed fibers. There are 48 reed fibers that have just been growing around the map naturally, so if you see things like this, just kind of let them grow. If you need more, which you probably shouldn't need too much more, but we're just going to do this anyway, you can just throw down some hydroponic farm tiles near where you're harvesting most of your polluted water. This is not positioned well. I'll just move this a little bit, actually. But the hydroponic farm tiles can be used to plant these reed fibers, and then you can just supply it with the polluted water that you have kind of sitting out on the map. This polluted water is going to do a lot for us throughout the scope of the game, so we will eventually use all of it, so we don't necessarily need to worry too much about using it on stuff like this. You don't want a ton of reed fibers. If you have like 200, that should probably last you throughout the entire game. And with this many hydroponic farm tiles and this many reed, or rather with this many thimble reed plants, you should be able to get this done pretty fast. I think I might have shut this off, by the way. I need to turn this back on. But yeah. So just going to grow some reed fibers in the meantime. It's probably a good thing to make sure that you have now until, or rather, when you're waiting to use it. So we'll just plant some thimble reeds and they will start growing here. We'll get some more reed fibers over time. So that's something we're going to want to do as well. I also wanted to talk a little bit more about digging downward. I did talk about this earlier. Anytime that I'm digging downward, this column is what I want to expand all the way down to the bottom of the map eventually. More specifically when you hit the oil biome, which we will in just a bit. I have to imagine it's probably somewhere around here. We're getting kind of close. Let me see if we can tell by the temperature overlay. Yeah, we're seeing parts of it right here. Here's some of it. So, yeah, we're getting close, but sometimes you might have to dig through these big ice areas. And I normally would say, don't get rid of these ice areas because they're very valuable. But we've gotten all the value that we need out of the ones that we found. We now have access to 4 of them. Here's one right here that I was kind of digging through to look for water, by the way. Or for a water source, like a geyser or something. We have this one. We have the other 2 or 3 that we found earlier. So we have plenty. So I don't mind destroying this if it's in my way. And I'm going to do that. But I'm also going to try to keep as much of the ice and stuff as possible. So since I haven't really done this that much on camera, or rather on camera, whatever, in a video, then we might as well just do that now. So I'm just going to get that started. What I'll typically do whenever I'm digging down to a new place, all the carbon dioxide is going to settle down here, so it's not going to be a great place for my duplicants to work. Oh, also, by the way, I think I mentioned this. I have been pushing the pump that is in control of all my ventilation, of getting all the carbon dioxide and stuff out. So once I dig down to a new section, I'm just going to replace this gas pump. I can get rid of the previous ones, by the way. I don't need that anymore. And I don't need the automation that's still here. So anytime you move down, you want to move your ventilation down as well, because I want this all to be as oxygen rich as possible. Anyway, I keep sidetracking myself. Let's start digging down. So I'm typically going to do this, measure out how many levels I want before I can create another ladder or a floor. This is mostly just so I can mine it out, but if I need to start building stuff here, I can. Most of the map eventually will not be all built on, so eventually this spacing isn't going to matter as much, but this is just for convenience mostly. Now I'm getting about down to the bottom where I would want to stop and just kind of wall things off. So I'm just going to do something like this. I don't want to waste this ice biome if I don't have to, but I will still be cutting through it and kind of making space. So I'm also going to create a spot down here where I can store all the ice and stuff that I find. So I'm going to do this. I did it up here, by the way. That's why these bins are here. There's a bunch of ice sitting on the ground. I could just seal this off entirely, and I don't really care about what's in there, so we might as well. And then if I need ice later in the game, I can go back here and get it. So I'm going to do something like this to wall this off and kind of keep the rest of this stuff insulated. Then I'll draw this over, and we can stop at the abyssalite. I don't think I've talked about the abyssalite much, but the abyssalite is basically the best natural thing in the game to prevent temperature exchange, which is why most biomes are surrounded by it. So if I need to disturb it, I will, but if I don't have to, I can just leave it alone. So I'm just going to try to leave it alone as much as I can here. Now that I'm at the bottom, I'm just going to draw a line like that across the bottom and kind of dig it out. And use the rest of these to place some tiles, because this is where all my stuff is going to sit that I mine out. So do something like this, and then I'll draw a ladder down this way as well. There. Also note that I have been kind of moving my water out of the way as much as I can. So here was just covered in polluted water. I have just had it drain over to the side over time and then kind of like wall it off, or keep some material in the way so that it would just stay out of my way and I can then pump it out later. That can be kind of a chore, but this is all very important for clearing stuff out and getting to the bottom of the map, which we definitely need to do. So now that we have that, we'll set this up, and we'll set up our pole. And then all I really need to do is have my duplicants come in here and get to work. There shouldn't be much else for them to do, so they should come here en masse, which is one of the biggest reasons why you want to spec them out to be good at digging and good at building for projects like this. So, yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to. We can leave this abyssalite. We'll replace it later. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to prioritize anything that's involving getting them all the way down there so that it's all landing on one place. So I'm just going to do this for all. Grab all of it. Sure, we can do it on this side too. And as long as they're building down here, all the material is going to fall. Then I can just ask to have them sweep all of the liquefiable stuff into these bins, and then I can wall it off like we did here. There's still some salt and seeds and sands in here, but I don't really care that much to clean everything out. Those are very common resources. I don't need to go too ham about making sure I preserve that. So yeah, while they're busy, I will talk about a couple of other things, and we'll get this all built out and kind of get expanded by the time this video is done. A couple other things that I had discovered along my digging that I wanted to mention was, where is it? Here's one. You might encounter these thermonullifiers. These, like most things on the map, are not that great. You have to feed this thing hydrogen in order to get some cooling. There are way better cooling options than this, and this is going to be very expensive from a hydrogen standpoint, whereas you could be using the hydrogen for power, so I'd really rather not. So if you see these, I would not worry about them. You can just ignore them. The other thing to keep mention of is this. If you ever see something that looks like this, is a sporkid. This is serious business. You do not want to mess around with this. This sporkid, you can see in the carbon dioxide there are zombie spores out there, and if your duplicants get infected by zombie spores, sometimes that can kill off your entire colony. So do not mess around with this. I will produce a separate video that talks about how to deal with this, but it's going to be kind of similar to how we walled off this room, where if you wall it off with the liquid lock, and then you can just get a pump, where'd it go? You can just get a pump in here and kind of pump all the infection out and just send it straight out into space, then that'll deal with this, and then you can go in here and do whatever you want to do. For the time being, and especially for this walkthrough, this is not required to do in order to, like, complete the game, quote unquote, so just don't worry about it. This is way more risk than it's worth. The other thing that I wanted to talk about that you might find on the map, now I don't remember where it is, but it's a critter fluxomatic. I wish I remember where it was. Here it is. This is basically a story trait as well that's just going to be to learn how to transform critters into different forms of their critters. I'm going to also say this is not really essential for a walkthrough and to just not worry too much about it. I will produce another video. I would say the most useful thing is going to be transforming these Drekos into glossy Drekos so that you can get plastic earlier than you normally would be able to. So that's not a bad way to do it, but it does require a lot of time to interact with, and we're pretty close to getting to plastic anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Alright, let's see how these duplicants are doing. Doing a pretty fast job, I would say. Also, another thing I'm going to mention is if you have some sections set up for shipping to ship stuff back, this can be really useful as time goes on, so that if you continue to dig upward, it still just all falls in one place and then you get it shipped back to this central point. This central point has a hilarious amount of things. Ooh, we're getting stone hatches now. This central point has a hilarious amount of things that are all just stacked in one place. But that's nice that everything that I need in the whole game is basically right here. So, yeah. Let's set up the stuff for these stone hatches now that I'm thinking about it. We want to send the stone hatchlings' eggs to the same place that we're sending this. We also want to allow stone hatchlings and stone hatches to be in our main room. There we go. And then this one's fine. It should be totally fine here. It's only going to drop eggs out if there's not enough eggs already sitting in here. And it'll just bypass and go straight to our drowning tank. Okay, cool. So fix that up. Let's see how our duplicants are doing down here. Alright, now that we've got most of the bottom done, let me uproot this wheezewort. We don't need that right now. You might get some water melting here if you're digging through this biome, but that's okay. And I'm checking the time on our video here. Let me just do this. I will flesh out what it's supposed to look like once we get down here, but it's not all going to be done by the end of this video. I will also want to build a handful of auto sweepers here, just like we have on the level above, so that when these things are active, they can start shipping their stuff back. But I don't want to let this start shipping until my duplicants have a chance to clear out all the liquefiables. So don't spec any of the auto or conveyor loaders to be loaded with any liquefiable stuff. Instead, what we can do when we get to this point is pretend that I'm sweeping up this whole thing and that this is all mined out already. I can just do this, mark everything for sweep, but they won't take it anywhere unless something is actually asking for it. So on these bins, I'm going to say, hey, sweep only, And not all, I just want the liquefiable stuff. That way, the stuff that I mark for sweep that is liquefiable, my duplicants will come over here, they'll throw it in this bin, and get it out of the way. And the stuff that is not will still be marked for sweep and they won't take it anywhere. This is also assuming that you don't have anywhere on the map that is marked to accept those swept materials. Eventually they will stop doing things because there's nothing left to do. Like there's no more stuff to sweep that is liquefiable. You can just cancel the other orders. So that's pretty much that, and then same thing with the ventilation. I want to place my ventilation down here so that we can move basically how far our oxygen is going to extend down into our base. And all I need to do is just copy the same settings that I have on the previous one. So I can just build it something like this. Actually, this is too low. I keep misclicking. I'm so bad at this. There we go. So yeah, I think you get the idea. We're just going to keep moving down as far as we can. We're going to try to retain as much of the ice and snow and polluted ice and stuff like that as possible by putting it in something like this and walling it in. But we will eventually hit the bottom, and it looks like we're coming up on it. Maybe one more section of stuff like this before we do hit the bottom. And when we do, I'll be back with another video because this is going to be where we're going to be creating suits and entering the oil biome and starting to get all that stuff set up as well. So until then, I'll see you soon, and thanks for watching. Take care.